You ready?
That's good.
All right, welcome back, Kate. Filming this on the final day of busy January, I think, for both of us. And yeah, very eager to get our final month revenue figures across the line.
Yeah, I feel like January is always a funny one because you want it to go by so quickly, but it's actually quite nice to have those extra days to hit your revenue targets. Um, One of the key things that we're going to talk about is how you deal with the inevitable drop off in traffic from Q4. So we know that January traffic will likely have declined for most brands. We're going to take you through the huge levels of traffic that Amazon in the UK, US, and other marketplaces in the US have seen across December.
Yeah, 100% looking forward to getting stuck into that. But despite it being a bit of a quieter January for a lot of categories, have you still been shopping, Kate?
I have, yeah. Um, Randomly, the last thing I bought was actually a pinata for my dad's birthday party this weekend with my nieces. So that's my last random purchase.
Very
What's
nice.
yours?
Well, anyone who's viewing this may notice that I've had a little bit of a haircut, so slightly unrelated, but we needed some new shampoo, so I bought some new shampoo recently. Uh, Kind of boring purchase, but annoyingly, and this is linking it back to Amazon, it was a like miniature bottle of it, despite on the listing looking like a full one. So slightly annoying, but I can't be bothered to return it.
I
Um, so yeah,
I fell to the same thing because I thought the pinata that I bought had come already stuffed with sweets, and I found out upon arrival that it wasn't. So, considering we're both Amazon experts, we should probably read the listing a bit more
yeah.
carefully.
How do you stuff a pinata? Isn't it
It's actually quite easy. So there's just like a little cardboard
plug?
tab at the bottom, so you can just
Yeah.
stuff it in. But yeah, I should have definitely read the small print for that one.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, at least he didn't sort of smash it up to see what was inside and then nothing was there.
Yeah.
Should we jump in? So yeah, I guess January is very nearly over for us when this is out. It might well be over for anyone listening, but 1 month down, 11 to go for anyone working in the space. Um, unless you're one of those brands that sort of specifically winter focused. I mean, yeah, sort of some of the fashion stuff. Maybe you're in sort of cold weather sports gear or something like that, or also the health space. We see a lot of pickup. We've got some data on that in a sec. See a lot of pickup in January with everyone coming out of quite an unhealthy December, looking to change habits and behaviors and things, maybe get into sport, and start to maybe emerge a bit more from um, homes and things, wanting to look their best and stuff. So yeah, for some brands, it's not such a quiet month. Um, but yeah, Kate, did you want to run through some of the traffic numbers you've got? This
Yeah,
is always a good
absolutely.
place to start to see how things are doing.
So December was a huge month. Amazon.co.uk visits were at 448 million. That was a 30% increase on November. So still incredibly strong. Last year we saw a 30% drop off from December to January. Obviously, we don't have January's full figures in yet for this year, but we would be predicting something similar. So I think we know that drop off is obviously inevitable, but I think a lot of what we're going to go through shortly will be about how we can help mitigate that as much as possible. Um, One thing I mean, the US is always kind of supercharged, but December Amazon.com visits were 3.1 billion, which is just huge. And interestingly, eBay US was at 650 million, and Walmart really not far behind at 560. So still just huge levels of traffic. I think eBay is always an interesting one in the UK because people tend not to think that the traffic is that high. But there's usually not a huge amount of difference between Amazon UK and eBay. Definitely, obviously targeted at different categories. But if you just want to be somewhere to kind of get more eyes on your listings and raise your awareness, then it's definitely worth rolling out across both, I think.
Yeah, it's easier to do now than it was as well, but we should probably chat about that on a separate episode. That'd be a good topic. Walmart as well in the US, there's lots of um, super interesting stuff coming out about that, and like cost per click being much
Mhm.
lower, and Walmart themselves investing a lot in trying to take market share away from Amazon. But we pulled some search data as well, because it's always interesting to see what what shoppers are really looking for.
Mm.
We wanted to look at sort of three different broader categories, and we've picked some choice keywords from those. So wellness, with that view about what we were talking about earlier around kind of new year, new me type thinking amongst consumers. So ran a search for people searching for just the term supplements, and looked like roughly the growth January to December was up about 63%, which is super interesting. But kind of in line with what I've seen across my clients in that space. Their growth maybe not that high, but they're kind of up 30-40% month on month compared to December. Um, for beauty, we ran a search for just the term makeup, and that's actually down 40%. My thinking there was sort of around Christmas parties and things in December, people dressing up and things like that, and that being less of a thing going
Mm.
into January. And then for sports, we looked at fitness watches. So Kate thought it would maybe be a bit more flat or even downward, with people buying them for Christmas presents and things like that. But actually, it's up
Mm.
65%, so even higher growth rate than the supplement side of things. So all those runners and the swimmers and things looking to track their progress into their New Year goals. But anything stand out for you there, Kate, on those?
The beauty one I think is really interesting, because I completely agree. I think a lot of those kind of generic makeup searches, sort of around makeup, like gift kits and stuff like that, will obviously be down quite dramatically. But I would think that the searches that are winning are kind of stuff across, I don't know, hair, like eyelash growth, or stuff like that. Stuff, I guess slightly more like traditional beauty, and more slightly more health related, I'd say, that kind of ties into that new year, new you thing. So I think that's an interesting one. Sports, I was definitely quite surprised by that one. But just goes to show, I guess, how sort of how keen people are to still purchase those, and how much the new year, new you thing is still obviously such a big deal for most consumers.
Yeah, yeah, and they were obviously some quite relatively niche
Mm.
searches within broader categories, but hopefully paint a little bit of a picture of the fluctuations you can see coming into the new year post Q4. And whilst a lot of the focus is on Q4, and quite rightly, thinking about Q1 and the seasonality of your brand and your products is super important, to make sure you're using the right strategy at the right time. So yeah, kind of well into the new year now. Um, and targets may have already been set if you're one of those brands or businesses that do your accounting like April to April, then you've got a few more months to go. So good luck to you. But we wanted to explore how you sort of got off on the best foot. Some tips, tricks, things to think about as part of setting up for success on Amazon. So, Kate, did you want to chat about subscribe and save vouchers?
Yeah, I think subscribe and save is something that should always be on your radar. I think it's sort of top 5 priority all year round. But I think when January is such a key space for recruiting, especially in the health, wellness, beauty categories, that's such a key month for recruiting new to brands. I'd absolutely have your subscribe and save vouchers switched on. Obviously ensure first of all that your products are enrolled into subscribe and save, but having those vouchers on for an extra 10% off or extra 15% off on first purchase, I think that's so important during these key periods. Important during deal periods, but definitely still in January, where it's still so crowded. I've always recommended to several brands to have these switched on, and results have always been really strong. Obviously, check your margins, make sure it makes sense, and I don't think it needs to be an always on kind of mechanic, but definitely for the month of January, I just, again, it's all part of setting yourself up for success. Just maximize your conversion where possible.
I think I actually learned about them from you um, last year. So,
Horrible.
and I think it's on top of your subscription as well. So it on paper does look like a big margin hit, but you've then got to think that the subscription is then, assuming the customer doesn't cancel, locked in, and that any subscription, any saving they get is against whatever your price is at the time that their subscription comes up for renewal. So if you were getting really kind of into it, you could do quite a steep subscription voucher discount in January, and then maybe put your price up slightly, or just make sure that you don't discount for a fairly long period afterwards to recoup
Mm.
that cost. The different ways of thinking about it, and again, very much product dependent.
I would add as well, it is a lot easier to see now. I mean, you can see your the amount of subscriptions that you have, but you can also see clearly how much a subscribe and save customer is worth versus a one-off customer. So obviously, look at how much your subscribe and save customer is worth. Look at what their lifetime value is over 12 months, which obviously you can also get from brand metrics, and make sure all of that comes into your decision. Because you're right, it is a hefty margin hit on that first purchase. But if you can see that their 12-month or their lifetime value is worth it, then it's a no-brainer, I think.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think you see it a lot with brands who are also big on D2C, and particularly where the product is super relevant to subscription. It's like they've really pushed that. And conversations I've had with brands who do that, they're weirdly often a bit anti doing it so much on Amazon for whatever reason.
Mm.
But it is a really powerful way to build sales up. I guess similarly, and another voucher uh, to think about in January is your abandoned cart vouchers. So relatively new feature. I think they dropped Q4 last year, or certainly that's when I came across them. They are that was not from Kate. I found them myself, and they are. I've used them a couple of times with a couple of different clients, and really good results. It takes a little while for the data to come through. So initially, it looks like nothing's happened, and then you check in a few weeks later, and you can see how well they've done. But effectively, you get a figure generated by Amazon of customers who have put your product in their cart and then obviously abandoned it, and you can target them with vouchers. I've tried kind of adding a product to my cart and then abandoning it and then running a voucher on that product for a client, and we didn't receive an email. So I think it appears on the product listing, but specifically for those users. So again, if you're doing retargeting, maybe with the DSP or sponsored display ads and things, and you're driving people to those product pages who are kind of a bit uncertain about making that purchase,
Mm.
or lost track or something like that, then it is quite a powerful tool just for capturing them. And again, that maybe they're subscribing as well. So the long-term values uh, interesting there. But you would, in theory, have a lot post Q4 when the traffic on Amazon is higher of abandoned carts. So it's a good time to run a voucher.
I think even if you're not, I mean, obviously the idea of that is to launch the promotion, but I find it interesting just to look at the sizes of the audiences anyway. I set up one a couple of weeks ago, and just understanding how many of like your abandoned cart, like understanding those metrics is so valuable. I was also really concerned because it's a minimum 10% discount, and I feel like we're kind of, obviously it's ingrained into our head from doing deals that unless it's like 30%, there's no point doing it. So I was concerned about what a 10% discount would do, but actually it was really positive. So I don't think there's any need to go particularly deep on those. And you can absolutely work your way up. Start with a 10%, go up to 15 if you're not happy with the results. But yeah, I started relatively low and was pleased with the outcome.
Hmm. And in that section, voucher section, there's lots of other options as well for targeting different customer buckets and things like that. But yeah, I wanted to call that one out specifically with the view that the number is probably fairly high at the moment in terms of people you can
Mm.
reach. So good one to do, and that's going to be the same going into February, probably even March, because I think the um, lead time on it is relatively long. I think it's about 60, 90 days or something. So you're going to capture that Q4 traffic even going into February. Um, and still on the topic of discounting, but I guess this time how to um, deal with the aftermath of potentially discounting a lot. So obviously post Q4 and potentially even in January, if you've been focusing on some of these voucher options and ways of attracting customers in your niche over the course of the past couple of months, your pricing average has potentially taken a little bit of a hit. That is what Amazon will use as your when they're calculating minimum deal prices in the future. They use a trailing 90-day average, so that's going to, yeah, obviously cover roughly just under 3 months. And so you probably want to think about beginning to rebuild that if you've been discounting particularly heavily, and for long periods of time, if you've been doing maybe sale prices in the back end or something for like 2 or 3 weeks at a time, then yeah, going into thinking about Prime Day and even Q4 2025, you want to start building that back up by letting your price settle at the it's sort of RRP or the higher level so that you can get a discount again in the future.
Yeah, I think from a pricing perspective, it's always like difficult to. I think it's because spring sale comes around so quickly. You kind of almost think that the only like the deal days only start in July with that first Prime Day. But actually, like spring sale obviously comes around usually at the end of Q1, and you can have major issues there if you've not managed your pricing properly. Um, I think also, I don't know, I always get different answers from everyone at Amazon when I ask them what the look back window is for pricing. Some say 30, some say 60, some say 90. So it's really tricky to like get a firm handle on it from client side. So I think Ted's advice is spot on. Always work towards 90. And you won't have any issues with your reference prices that way. Because yeah, otherwise you can definitely come unstuck.
Mhm. And I think that a good way to think about it, and again, this is going to be dependent on the type of product you've got, but there's essentially one big deal event every quarter,
Mm.
roughly. There's now
Yeah.
a lot more in Q4, but there's spring deals, Prime Day, they're kind of just at the end of Q2, the early Prime Day just at the end of Q3, if not sometimes
Mm.
in Q3, and then obviously Black Friday in Q4. So you can let your price settle if you're just doing those events, but if you're doing more or you're really having to push discounting, then it's obviously something to think about, and kind of carving out a 90 up to 90-day period in um, your year to let the price adjust is worth doing, particularly before big events.
I
Um,
think being aware as well that if you do have sort of any competitors, any competition from a retail perspective, so if you've got anyone off Amazon dropping their prices, like as soon as you match that buy box, that's affected your pricing sort of straight away. So it's not just kind of discounts that you're setting; it's any like buy box matches as well. Obviously, come into it.
yeah, 100%, 100%. Um, Another point, it'd be interesting to get your view on this, Kate, is using the time, particularly if you've got a bit of downtime in January, to just take some notes and record your learnings from Q4 2024 in this case. So last year, the a few different changes this Q4 with the Black Friday being slightly longer. We'll talk about that in a sec, but obviously that being one, but also taking a look at your data, like did your cost per click increase on your ads, or was there a certain kind of content or something that didn't really land? Those kind of things, and then getting a plan in place for Q4 2025 to address them, whether they're positive or negative, double down on the positives and work on the negatives.
Firstly, I love that you're suggesting there's any downtime ever.
Yeah.
We'll have time to look at this. But no, you're right. I think often like the craziness of Q4 goes by so quickly, and then depending on what industry you're in, January there's a lot of pressure. It does kind of just run away from you, but absolutely reviewing Q4 really closely. I think you're completely right with the content perspective as well. Most brands do like a content upgrade before Q4, and you never really get a chance to look at the data. You just kind of run with that content for months to come. So carefully analyzing that and making sure that you saw the level of conversion increase that you were expecting from it. I would add as well, always try to A/B test during Q4, because quite often clients will do, one content upgrade, or they'll roll out a whole new ad strategy, and it's difficult to measure because you're always going to see an uplift in Q4. So it's really tricky to look at how that really worked. Whereas if you've got A/B tests with two different types of content, you can actually nail down into what worked better throughout that period. I always find that doing one test, in November, December is always tricky to review the data because it's just always so skewed.
Yeah, you've got to definitely take it with a pinch of salt, but hopefully there'll be some clear learnings and things that you can take into your new year. Kate, do you want to chat about the heavy November, December deal period?
Yeah, definitely. And I think you spoke to it a minute ago, like now trying to work out how many deals Amazon have in Q4 is like a nightmare. When will Prime Day 2 fall? Will it fall too close to Black Friday? Will Black Friday roll into December like it did? It's quite difficult. And I think in November and December was particularly heavy this year. I completely agree with what you were saying earlier. It feels like it's taken a little bit longer for January to warm up. I know for me, sort of first few days of January were really strong coming out of any sort of Boxing Day, New Year sales. But then we saw that the market was a lot quieter. And kind of second, third week of Jan, it began to pick up again. I think it's always interesting to look at consumer behavior in January anyway. Sort of spending power is generally less. We've got Blue Monday, etc. But I think this January more than ever, it did feel like it just took a little bit longer to get back to that norm, I would say.
Yeah, 100%. The big piece for me was actually across the Black Friday week, or not week, it was sort of 10, 11 days. The first day was a Thursday, and that was for most of my clients the strongest day. And
Mm.
actually, Black Friday, by the time it got round, the term was deal fatigue that kept getting bandied around at the time. The uptick just wasn't there, and if you were focusing just on that day, there was likely a competitor that had come in and been discounted the whole week prior, and so the customer had bought their air fryer or whatever it was they were waiting for on the actual Black Friday. And I think that then crept in and has affected the rest of the year. Again, in 2023, I remember the first couple of weeks of December being still quite strong off the back of Black
Mm.
Friday. But again, that was a bit subdued this time. Post Christmas was a bit subdued too. And then early January. But it seems like things are picking up a bit now, which is positive.
Yeah, I feel like deal fatigue is such a huge thing because like for the last, I don't know, 10 years, you can go anywhere and get an item on sale. I think it's great that brands tend to go deeper on Black Friday, Prime Day, etc. But I think the customer just knows that there'll be many, many opportunities to shop that at sale, whether they want to do it on Black Friday or they want to do it a month later.
Mhm.
So I feel like, yeah, deal fatigue, like you say, definitely in Q4 and January, but almost it's like an all year round thing now.
Yeah, 100%. I have lots of conversations with premium brands, so brands at a kind of higher price point to
Mm.
the average in the market, and they're often very anti-discounting just in general. And it's always an interesting conversation, kind of talking to them about Amazon and the algorithm and sort of playing the game a little bit, so that you build up your ranking and you don't get outpaced by the competition because you're already at such a disadvantage by being the higher price point. And so maybe for those brands now, actually Black Friday isn't the place to play so much anymore because you're having to discount for so long. You're not you're not differentiated at all, and despite being premium and customers coming across you at a discounted price over this limited period, you're crowded out essentially.
Mm.
And so maybe thinking about spring deal or something that's a bit more low profile would be a good way to kind of get that ranking boost in at a different time of year. But it's becoming increasingly tricky with those types of brands that don't like discounting. I mean, it always is, but more so now.
Mm, definitely. Um, I would say another sort of general point of how to, I guess, foolproof yourself for success is, especially in the UK, I think January is generally looked upon as quite a depressive month. People are, the spending power is not particularly high. People are staying indoors. There's the whole dry Jan thing, and I think it almost just it makes it more important from an advertising perspective to up your awareness because everyone is just consuming so much more media. It'll be interesting to see what the TikTok traffic was for January, which we should have in a couple of days. But I think ensuring that you're driving traffic from TikTok to Amazon in this month is so important. And also that you're using really strong creative and that it's as engaging as possible. Because the pool of potential consumers that are out there looking, they might not be ready to purchase, but that comes back to Ted's point about your abandoned cart. It's just such an important month and Q1 in general to try to make contact with those brands and get yourself set up to convert them in the weeks or months to come. Because it's certainly a space where people are, I guess, browsing a lot more, staying home a lot more, not kind of being out in that kind of Q4 rhythm where everyone's out and doing things and tend to shop slightly, although they spend more, they're shopping less frequently. Yeah, I think it's important to remember that the pool of people who you can target is huge in Q1.
Yeah, completely agree. Uh, I think there's a piece around content customization as well. So thinking about what people are doing in
Mm.
Q1. So maybe they're at home more, going out less, hot drinks, whatever it is, cooler weather, that kind of thing. Really tailoring the content to how people are feeling, and that was definitely a 2024 topic, was
Yeah.
introducing that more, like we speak about A/B testing a little bit already, but yeah, thinking more about that uh, customer behavior. And I think as we move into more video focused advertising and the DSP developing and things like that with Prime Video ads, that will become more and more important, and it will give you the edge.
I think there's loads of ways to be clever with it. So I don't know if the traitors is even a thing in France, but it's huge in the UK. And there were tons of brands that were just being really clever with their content. They had kind of these black cloaks over their products and stuff like that. And it was just it's stuff that's different to what other competitors are doing. It's super engaging. We've obviously got the Super Bowl coming, which is going to be huge in the US and to an extent in the UK, I think. So just putting your spin on stuff like that. I think even day to day, and we talk about seasonal content a lot, but I know in recipe pieces, it might be like a summer cocktail in June and July, but is it a hot matcha or something in January and February? How you can just tailor your products to make sure that it's relevant for somebody in that season um, is super important.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. And then similarly, again, 2024, I think this started to be talked about, but I think again, thinking about video ads,
Mm.
specifically, is always Amazon's always two or three steps behind. That's certainly what is going on TikTok. But that because of that, there's space to bring some of that TikTok way of thinking to Amazon. Um, and yeah, fine, you're going to have to format that video a fair amount to get it to work on Amazon, but there's such an opportunity there to uh, uh, use that kind of content. I mean, we're on Amazon, we're still talking about infographics and things like that. It's not very exciting. It's kind of engaging from an Amazon perspective, but there's an opportunity to, yeah, I guess basically think about sort of entertainment via the ads, and you would genuinely stand out if you started doing stuff like that. But it would require a lot of testing, particularly from the how it actually affects sales point of view.
I remember suggesting adding a UGC video to a client maybe like this time last year, and they were looking at me like I was crazy. And now, I mean, a good 50-60% of stuff that I see on Amazon includes UGC. And like you say, that's been sort of directly picked up and dropped from TikTok. So
Hmm.
being ahead of the game and repurposing your content, obviously not everything's going to work, but I think repurposing some of your content is definitely the way to go.
Hmm. Hmm. And so yeah, similarly on the imagery as well, is the same way of thinking. Um, and yeah, I think it kind of in conclusion to some of this, if you're experiencing a bit of a drop after Q4, that's absolutely normal. We're all with you, and we've all been there. But I think it's a good opportunity to take stock of things a little bit. Touch base with some of the wider trends and strategies and things that are going on in the space, and yeah, get yourself in the customer's shoes basically, and start thinking about, okay, what are they doing right now? How do we get in front of them? How do we convert them and onto subscriptions and increase that long-term value? But yeah, wishing you all the success. That's it from me, Ted at Unboxed, and Kate as well. Looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe.